Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of Go From the Beginning. This time we'll talk Boolean Logic. So, let's try to center this discussion on a known topic, namely that of cars, because we can reason about cars, we understand cars. First off, we have a print line that says run car. By saying run car in this case, what we're saying, because we don't apply any Boolean logic, this is always going to run. Regardless of whatever we do with this code, as long as it sits like this, it's always going to run. For cars, this is not true. So what we can do for cars is start using Boolean variables. Now, Boolean variables are interesting because they contain true and false, which makes them really valuable when you try to evaluate logic that should either run or don't run, because that's really the name of the game here. We are able to decide if a piece of code should run or shouldn't run. So what we're saying here is that if we have gas in our car, if we have the key in the ignition, then our car can run. Running our code here, we see that it says I can drive car, which checks out, right? Because I have gas in my car, I have a key in the ignition. Note how these two variables forms an expression via the help of this operator. So this operator says this side should be true and this side should also be true. What if it isn't true? What then? Well, I can add this else construct that's able to say the following. This else construct can say suddenly, you can't drive the car. Now, because I haven't changed any of these variables, it will only run the if clause if that one is true, and it will ignore the else clause. But let's try to change that. Let's change has key in ignition to false. Now you can see that it's, instead of running the if clause here, it's running the else clause and saying, hey, I can't drive car. Well, technically your code is trying to run both of these, right? But it will only run the statements within this clause if that clause itself evaluates to true. So now you can see how we can add else. We can also add an else if. Now an else if is very similar to that of an if. It also takes an expression. We want to make sure that we can express ourselves this way. So what we're saying is, if you have a key in the ignition, someone can still make sure that the car moves forward. So at this point, we need to be more specific, right? So imagine that you have keys in the ignition, the car is on. It might not have the gas, but as long as you got someone behind the car pushing it, it can still function. So if we change that and that, we don't have the full condition for the car to run, but the else if will run, right? So if this one evaluates to false, then it does an attempt to run this instead. The else is not being run now as this clause is evaluating to true. Now so far you've seen the use of the AND operator. We'll take away this part of the code and instead rely on a new type of operator called OR. Now by using OR, what we're saying is that if either of you fields are true, if either you are true or you are true, then this piece of code will run. Now you can see that because either of them were true, then it was able to run. And for the OR operator to evaluate the false, both of these need to be false. So that's how that works. There's one more operator I want to show you before the end of this video, and that is the NOT operator. By using the NOT operator, we are negating whatever this value was. If this is a false, then it becomes a true. If it was a true, then it becomes a false. Now you can see that we have no gas at this point, right? And if we run this piece of code, it's mad at us because we are now suddenly not using a variable. Thank you, Go, for having my back, for not making me a sloppy programmer. And now this time it takes this false statement, we see that it's false, it turns it into a true, and this whole thing evaluates to true, and it prints no gas. That's it, folks. That's all I had for this video. So don't forget to use Boolean logic, if, else, Boolean variables, the AND operator, the OR operator, or the NOT operator. That will take you far.